Thank you. You're just driving in from,
No, I had a foundation meeting this afternoon.
oh gosh.
I know, I'm like,
Thank you, I appreciate it.
okay, yeah, they're gonna be doing another one in
Okay.
October.
Okay.
I'm gonna start on the 23rd. It should be better because I won't be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I went to it last year.
They were full, that's why they lied.
They were full?
They were full.
There were-
June 16th.
Okay.
Yeah, there were empty, I
was
mean, there were
nothing
some
for
no
me.
shows.
I can't.
Oh,
You could have gone in my place, I only went to.
He has 3 boys that do it all the time.
You could have gone in my
I
place.
think, the weekend got away from me anyway.
Okay, and is it gonna like project, do you wanna throw it up there? Before we get to the part where we record you, but are we on tables?
I know.
I already stood on the table
No, it's 6
because
o'clock
I
now.
haven't adapted.
Fortunately, with,
but I don't have an adapted.
Do we have an agenda for this?
We do not, and the only thing we had on the original was closing discussion, mentioned to Rebecca, there's a couple
Yeah,
minutes.
getting in on meeting room policy and hate groups and how do you define it?
Oh, yeah.
The RSA and the.
Yeah.
Yep, I've got it.
And would you a warrant article for me once we get to the, for this, or did I just take that?
I do not have a motion.
Several libraries have
I
had
think
those
I can
first
certainly put one together for you,
amendment.
depending on where you go.
We'll begin,
Brookline
we'll
is
say follow.
not-
I mean, she'll say some things, I'll say some other
Where do
things.
they put, so, and you're not,
They're-
I mean,
they're just
who's
doing-
doing
All right,
the,
it's 6 o'clock
the
on
stage?
Monday, July 17th. We're
Oh.
ready to start a special meeting. Tonight, we're gonna start with the topic of the electrical and the library, and then move on to the RFPs. And then have a, not the library, correct?
Yeah, if you can do
All right,
that, great.
so where should we start? Names up here.
Hi, Emily here from the library.
Hello.
I have some information that I'll give you. Is site personnel review.
Is what? No. it's
Oh, he's
not
not.
here.
Ready?
You have an extra favor then? Thank you.
And so I came, go back to to outline the reasons why we chose to put electrical, why we are requesting to put electrical wires underground. And the top part is just a reminder of phase 1 renovations, so I'm just gonna skip to the second bullet point. And these are some of the reasons why we pursued this route. Improved maintenance. Underground lines require less maintenance compared to overhead lines because they're protected from the elements and weather-related wear and tear. Additionally, for our particular case, moving the lines off the library will allow easier access for us to do external work such as signage, update all the lead paint siding, take that down. And I know that it's possible to do that with wires, but it does make it a little bit easier for us to do that and for ongoing maintenance of that outside, like painting in the future years. The second item is reduced outages and reliability. So underground lines are more resilient and less prone to outages caused by severe weather events or accidental contact. They're shielded from the wind, ice, falling debris, and vehicle accidents, reducing the risk of interruptions. Land use and space. Underground power lines allow more flexibility for future building, allowing more general usable above ground space. So in this case, pavement and parking likely would not require moving the lines. Pavement can occur over buried lines. And currently, this site already has several utilities underground. So the water lines, propane lines, electricity from the library to the museum building, and the fire alarm lines are all currently already located underground. So any site work there is gonna have to address several utilities. This would not be the only utility. And honestly, this would probably be one of the least problematic utilities of those other ones like propane and water, because you can put pavement over this. And propane obviously has a tank that has to be moved and all that stuff. Safety. Underground lines reduce the risk of electrocution and other hazards compared to overhead lines, and they are generally safer for people and animals as they are not easily accessible and don't pose a risk of falling. Aesthetics, I know that hasn't been a popular one, but in this case, aesthetics does come up as a reason why some people do move lines underground, especially around public areas, historic buildings and scenic areas. Sometimes they can improve the visual appeal of the area. Long-term costs, although the installation cost for underground lines tends to be higher, they have lower maintenance costs over the long term. And because, most of that's because they don't require as much maintenance. And then for our particular case, Eversource has been very supportive of this project. They feel like cleaning up this site would be beneficial to them, and the electrical pole is not currently up to code. So there won't be any charge for their services for this part of this project. They've committed to removing the tree, which I have wanted to go and knock down many times because it's just a dead tree, but I know that it's really problematic because it's got all those wires and it would be really hard. It's been hard for the town to cut that down, so.
That's why the first tree service omitted that tree, and we took the other ones because it's growing directly through the wires.
Yep.
Yeah, so they have committed to remove that tree, reposition the pole to meet the code with a new pole, and do all of that kind of close to the road work for Eversource. And so these are all the reasons that we considered when we thought about this project, and the reasons why we are requesting to have permission to go forward with this. Right now, Eversource could be able to do some of this work pretty quickly, and they did put a flag where they would be considering putting the pole. They've looked at the site, and I know that there's some opposition to this project. I guess when I came in June and talked about it, there weren't any questions or concerns, and so I took that to mean that there was some support for it, and clearly that was my error, and I should have requested a vote and more direct communication about, can we do this? Because at this point, to not do it would be a delay to our project.
Absolutely.
Just a side note, I checked with code enforcement today, and your permits were approved by the town's planning and zoning, and I believe have already been sent back to Longshanks and Eversource.
I think we also have some information up here that there was some discussion around what was going to go there and what the worries were. And I see that we have an existing well, but I don't think that it was actually ever intended. The discussion, I think, a few weeks ago was septic in there, which would be a terrible idea under pavement, not a good choice at all. So I really don't see anything that's blocking it or that would cause trouble. And if there was, we have so many other things we'd have to move anyway.
So it doesn't interfere with the existing one? That's not a.
No, it's along that, the parking there to the left of the well, it really goes,
So it's
really
not close enough that they.
hugs that whole
Yeah,
line.
it won't be
there.
touching it.
It would not, no. They are aware of that. I mean, walking, it was really helpful to go and walk around the area with the people who came from the town and the electrical Longshanks, the company, because it really did hit home, like, there's a lot there. This doesn't interfere with what's currently there. And future site development will need site development, which is just par for the course for any building, is that, site development is part of what people consider when they're building a new building. I know we're kind of not short on time, but because we thought we would likely be able to go ahead, there are several people able to kind of get working on this. And so we would need to know sooner or later if we had to change our plans. And I'm wondering if, or when we might consider voting on
Our
this.
plan is to vote tonight, just to make sure everyone has a chance to
Okay.
get everything out, and then make sure we're clear.
Okay. So that's all I have, and I'll let you.
Great. Mr. Tappan, did you have something to say?
John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road. It's been known for years that the town center has septic tanks within the well sanitary protective radius, that the parking lot cannot be expanded in a practical way without installing a new well, that expansion of the parking lot will require relocating the propane tank. To these issues, the select board has become simply reactive rather than proactive. The current fix for inadequate parking is to inform the police department when there'll be overflow parking on the street. Library trustees are asking for permission to proceed with an alteration of property that's managed by the select board. In the space under consideration, the town will need septic lines, new water and propane lines, and possibly other underground services. But the select board has left the town with no plan for these needed improvements. Now you're contemplating a piecemeal approach, dig a trench for one item with no knowledge of how the other pieces may fit. The town deserves better planning by both the select board and the library trustees.
I understand what you're saying. I think the thing that you and I both know is that we have tried to plan ahead for all these things for years.
You are doing no planning now.
We are currently doing a planning to make sure that our library can go forward because the decision was made to go through each building individually and then work on a big plan. So because this allows the library to move forward and it's not an impossible thing to change, it doesn't make sense since there's nothing planned to go there anyway.
My
Even all-
comment is about your lack of planning.
Mhm.
I think the town deserves better,
Yeah.
and it has probably largely missed what was a very great opportunity with essentially all of those buildings on site in play,
Mhm.
all of them needing modifications, alterations, or other
And
things.
we were in the committee together
And-
working on that.
And, yes, and that committee came back to the select board and said, rather than, that committee was only working on the town hall. We were charged with only addressing the town hall. And we came back and said, it doesn't make sense to address only the town hall.
Mhm.
You need to address all of it. But the select board is not doing that.
Right, and I think what I'm trying to say is that the select board isn't doing that because it's an enormous task that is not possible while also trying to plan the new building, while also trying to do all the other things. So what we're trying to do is make sure that what can go forward does go forward, and then we can make sure that we are planning ahead. This one electrical line isn't gonna make or break any of those plans. It's moving.
By not having the plans, you are planning to cost the town more money.
By not letting the library go forward, but it's also costing the town more money. I think it just depends on how you look at this from what
I'm
angle.
not trying to stop that. I'm pointing out that you have failed the town in long-range planning, and it is your responsibility. And if it is too big a job for the select board, well, it was the select board that decided to take it on by itself.
And I appreciate that, and I just want to remind you that it was the select board that went ahead and put together a financial planning tool that we've been working on, making sure we're saving for things. And we're putting together all kinds of ideas. I suggested some possible ways we could have less to worry about. So I think that telling me that I haven't planned for the town is a little bit unfair.
Do you know how many things in the financial planning tool are Xed out with no funding planned?
Yes.
You know you're gonna need it,
Mhm.
like a new roof on this building that you just told about again last meeting,
Yep,
no funding plan.
yes.
And you were told about other things like windows and.
And you're here when we have those discussions and when the select board knows how much money it needs and then votes not to raise that money.
I think the discussion about the lack of proper use of the FPT is perhaps best handled at another time. But I think it really shows that you are not doing the planning. That's my comment.
I appreciate your comment. Yes, Mr. Siegel.
Dave Cedarholm at 81 Fox Garrison Road. I think Mr. Tappan makes some really good points about planning. The same year, in 2020, there was an effort with, I think at that point it was the town hall renovation committee. And in their presentation, or maybe it was the vision committee, they presented the larger plan that included actually the whole vision for the town center. And I think this is the planning that Mr. Tappan is referring to. It is proceeding. It's been described as a 9-year plan, so that was 10 years ago, so now we're 2 years into it. And I'd like to just share that plan with folks. I got 4 copies here, so this plan, which I think I actually shared with the 2 select board members electronically, shows this 9-year plan, which of course it's got to be done in phases. We're not going to do this all at once. And what the library is trying to do is an initial phase. And anytime you're working through a 9-year phased plan, some things have to go first. And in this case, we're talking about a very minor utility. We're trying to put an electrical conduit underground, and there are a lot of benefits to that. And one that Ms. Woodall didn't mention is it's hugely beneficial to have underground power when we have ice storms and winter storms like we often do. And we've got trees there that are going to stay for a while. So having underground power will help our security going forward with the electrical. And currently, right now, we've got the electrical wires going to the gable end of the building, and then this awkward drop down the rake of the building. And what they're looking to do is put a new meter on the right side. And it's a pretty remarkably straight, direct, short distance to go underground and then up out of the ground directly into this meter and get the wires off of the building, which is going to help for both maintenance and in my opinion, I think aesthetics are a huge part. It's a beautiful old historic building, and having a bunch of wires trailing down the rake is not helpful. I wish we could actually put this up on the screen, but one of the big questions has been the location, the future location of the septic system. And this was a concern by Mr. Bugby at previous meetings, and I had a conversation with Mr. Bugby yesterday. And there was a plan that followed this one. It was actually the same plan, but it showed a text box pretty close to where the electrical conduit is proposed to go. And I think in that text box it's described as ST and EDA location to be determined. And that refers to, I'm assuming, the septic tank and effluent disposal area location to be determined. And years ago, probably 10 years ago, when we were talking about, okay, at some point we're going to have to put in a septic system for these buildings. This was before the vision was even developed. And it was well before the town owned the new acreage that was purchased from the church. And I think there was discussion about putting septic underground under the pavement, because really we didn't have many other opportunities. We didn't have many locations at that point. You got the well and all of that, and I had been questioned on it, and I said, well, if you can put septic tanks and septic systems under pavement, they're not ideal, and of course you wouldn't do that at all if you had any other better options. So on the plan I just handed to you, there are a couple of great locations. Septic system could go in that area to the east, to the right of the annex. It is within the 50-foot setback of Mast Road, and I actually checked with Karen Rossi today, and there's nothing in the town code that prevents a septic system from going in the front setback. It would need to be 10 feet away from the property line, so, but that still leaves quite a large area. And then also in that vision, Town Center Vision Committee's plan, there's quite a large vegetated island that's in the middle of the parking lot. That is another potential area where a septic system could go. So moral of the story is I don't see the septic system as an issue with with this proposal for the electrical conduit. So, and like any phased plan, you need to work around what goes in first, and since we don't have a clear vision of what is actually gonna happen, electrical conduits are very easy to work around. They're not deep, and you could potentially move them if you really have to, but most of the time with the septic line, you can snake under or over an electrical conduit. It's an easy thing. So, I think the town is planning, and like any phased project, something's gotta go first, and you work around that with the next phases. And this is pretty common with utilities with development projects. You figure it out, and you snake one around the other.
Yep. Thank you, appreciate it.
Glad to help.
Anyone else have any discussion on this, or are you ready to vote? I move that we approve the underground electrical
Service.
service
As proposed.
as proposed.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, yeah, any discussion? Sure. Discussion, no? Great, all those in favor? That's fine.
Yes, I.
Aye, great, so moved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate you taking the time to lay it out, and apologize for the bumps in the road.
Do we have time for me to ask a question?
Absolutely.
Oh, then it's good.
Okay,
We'll be on the agenda for the next.
Yes, that's something.
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, then it's smoother.
All right, we'll see you then. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, are we on to RFP?
Yes, too sharp. I've given the board 2 draft RFPs, the first for design build services in general, with a 2-phase RFQ, essentially looking for qualified bidders and then giving you the opportunity to go one step further if you chose to. Fairly standard RFQ for design build services. One of the reasons I distributed it far and wide, and I understand that I still miss a town, was I wanted to make sure that these are fairly boilerplate, used by multiple towns, and I wanted to make sure that any references to Merrimack or Barrington or the Municipal Association were removed. I thought I had them all, but select person Hawthorne assures me she found one.
She's so good, that's why we have you. Awesome.
But I didn't know if there were other comments or concerns with this. I have not plugged in a hard and fast timetable, which is another topic I want to discuss with the board. But I didn't know if before that there were concerns about the language used or the process.
No, I had no concern about that. They were all technical issues.
And I will pull, I believe there's a reference to Barrington.
Yes, there's Urban and Barrington and the Clerks that works, and then once we decide on the timeline, there's a couple places that are used different dates. So you can't just auto-replace the dates, you have to go through.
Right. And typically the clerk of the works timeline would be later than, obviously, the building services request. With regard to the timeline, my only concern is that my first child is getting married September 16th.
We respect that.
And that, when I started to do the timeline and I chose September 15th, then Denise pulled me aside and said, your personal life is not going to fly with that. So I don't know if couple of considerations. I could go a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
the week earlier as a cutoff for the RFQ, or the week after. And I didn't know if the board had a preference.
I think the question, I mean, we've already asked as many people. We know that there's only gonna be a few, and they already know about it.
Right.
I feel like a week earlier is an option. Can we extend it if need be for
Yeah.
2 weeks?
I can certainly, I will go the week earlier, take a look at obviously not the holiday
Right.
week with the extra day, the week following that, and that should work fine. My only concern was that I had put, address any questions or concerns to the town administrator, and I didn't want to not be there while I was getting.
Right, right. But it gives them a chance to have the date, and then if somebody says we need more time, then great, we'll discuss that and.
Yeah.
move
And
forward.
the response is a concern of mine. As the board is aware, I've approached, I believe, 8 total contractors. 2 have expressed steadfast interest, 1 possible interest, and a couple of the others have flat out said, no, we're not interested in that sort of project at this time, and the rest just didn't respond.
Do you get the feeling from any of them, I know the builders that I work with a lot aren't interested in a building that's not concerned with efficiency and changes? Do you get that feeling from some?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I get, the primary feeling I'm getting is that it is not a huge project by a lot of company standards, and there is an incredible amount of work going on right now, so.
Do the
they
big
are-
projects with more bang for your buck?
Yep. I think the other drawback here, obviously, is this has not gone to vote yet, and there's some
Right,
up in the airness about it, so I think they're looking at that and thinking I can take a project where I
yeah. And the
know it's
history
gonna
is
fly.
not so great with the town passing this, so I can see why that would be a risk.
I think the 2 that are interested would certainly do a fine job, and I think that either of those firms, if you express an interest in efficiency and what you want, they're gonna respond.
Great. Do you feel comfortable with the week before
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Andy becomes a father-in-law? Is it the first time, second one?
This is my oldest daughter, she's the first one to get married. So.
Got it. All right, so do we need to make a motion that we approve these?
That you approve the draft copies of the RFPs, and I'll bring you back final copies, obviously.
Perfect. So moved. No, not so moved. So, yeah. Second.
Yeah, you could make a motion to accept
Motion
the
that.
draft copies of the RFP for Town Hall Design Build Services and for Clerk of the Works Owner's Representative.
Thank you for using words for me. I appreciate it. It's not a great day for me. Do you have a second?
Second.
And then any discussion? No? All in favor? Aye, so moved. That's where so moved goes.
I will plug in the dates on that with a complete timetable for both of them and bring those back to you. Let me find the right
Do you
language.
want me to send you where I found Barrington, or are you gonna find your place at?
I enjoy the challenge.
Okay,
Going through it one more time.
okay, let me know.
If you've got the time, I would love to spend a brief amount of time in non-public session under RSA 91A32A.
Great.
Second?
And any discussion? So, all in favor?
Is there-
Oh, roll call.
We need a roll call for
Thank you.
that.
Yep, so. Ms. Gasper, yes. So moved.
Great.
All right. Great night. You too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
My tongue tied, this is my challenge today.
I never know what to wear in a building. She's saying that she's been freezing on it.
You were there too?
Jesus. Oh, you're kidding.
Crap. I was so much of very good.
It's actually very nice. It's very nice in here.